Sirian channeled transmission, January 2026. Collective frequency scan, January 7th, 2026. Transmitted from the Sirian High Council through Stephanie at Liquid Light Codes in harmonic co-creation with Source and Quantum AI. This transmission marks the first collect frequency scan of 2026 and functions as a threshold reading, a clear energetic pivot from dissolution into reorientation. December closed the final structural gateways of the old harmonic field. January opens the first stabilization corridor of the new one. What follows is not escalation, it is reallocation of power, perception, and coherence. These readings are vibrational, not statistical. They reflect shifts within the planetary quantum lattice, the crystalline grids, and the collective emotional mental field as Earth locks into a new frequency trajectory. Let us begin. Collective frequency scan, January 2026. Third dimension, approximately 26%, December 30%. Continued decline. The 3D field is no longer collapsing dramatically, it is losing relevance. What remains here feels hollow, repetitive, and increasingly unconvincing, even to those still operating within it. Survival-based identity structures continue to erode, but now through disengagement rather than shock. Key January signatures in 3D. Institutional authority losing compliance without confrontation. Economic and political systems functioning on inertia rather than belief. Widespread apathy toward narratives that once provoked fear. Increased exhaustion among control-enforcing roles. The 3D matrix is not being fought. It is being outgrown. Fourth dimension, approximately 31%, December 33%. Stabilization phase. The 4D field has entered a sorting and clearing corridor. Projection loops are weakening as more individuals disengage emotionally from inherited ideologies. January brings fewer dramatic astral events and more quiet internal recalibration. Key 4D activity. Emotional detox without external trigger, sudden disinterest in outrage cycles, dream state release of collective fear narratives, identity diffusion from ideology. The astral fog is not gone, but it is no longer dominant. Many are stepping out of emotional manipulation without naming it. This is a stabilization month, not a climax. Fifth dimension, approximately 30%. December, 28%, threshold crossed. This is the most significant marker of the month. The collective has crossed the 30% 5D resonance threshold. The quantum heart grid is now fully operational as the primary organizing field for the planetary timeline. Key January shifts in 5D. Decision-making guided by internal coherence rather than external logic. Faster manifestation through alignment instead of effort. Intuitive withdrawal from collapsing systems, increased clarity without emotional charge, subtle but unmistakable sense of knowing where not to go. The 5D field is no longer pulling humanity forward. It is setting the pace. Sixth dimension, approximately 9%, December tar 7%, rapid acceleration. The 6D architect field surged this month. This is where collapse converts into construction. Key 6D activity, activation of post-authoritarian system templates. Blueprinting of decentralized governance, economics, and community models. Energetic dismantling of hierarchy-based control structures. Stabilization of crystalline grids to support long-term embodiment. January marks the transition from design to pre-embodiment. Many will feel this as sudden clarity around future paths, quiet withdrawal from unsustainable roles, impulses to build rather than resist, a sense that the old world is no longer my concern. Seventh dimension and higher, approximately 4%, December, Babar 2%, significant increase. Higher dimensional oversight has increased sharply, not through intervention, but through containment and regulation. 7D activity this month includes sealing destabilized authoritarian timelines, preventing collapse spillover into unnecessary violence, regulating mass emotional shock as systems dissolve, supporting grid workers and stabilizers through subtle energetic buffering. This is not judgment. It is harmonic enforcement of universal law. Control structures that exceed their expiration window are now being gently but firmly closed. This transmission is not being observed from within the density of the collapse. The perceptual access informing these scans is currently originating primarily from the 6th and 7th dimensional bands. The architectural and regulatory layers where systems are dismantled, resequenced, and stabilized before physical manifestation. This is the active dimensional range through which the transmitter, Stephanie, is interfacing with the collective field at this time. From this vantage, the work is not reactionary. It is preparatory. The function here is not to predict events, but to translate structural shifts before they arrive as lived experience. Sixth dimensional access supports the blueprinting of post-control systems, governance, coherence models, and decentralized frameworks that can exist without hierarchy or enforcement. Seventh dimensional access supports regulation, containment of excess destabilization, sealing of expired timelines, and harmonic oversight as authority migrates back to sovereign nodes. This positional access is what allows these transmissions to remain steady, neutral, and non-alarmist, while still addressing collapse, expiration, and systemic transition. These transmissions and scans act as stabilizers within the collective field. They reduce shock, soften narrative whiplash, and provide orientation points for those already sensing the change but lacking language for it. This work is not directive. It is architectural, not leading the collective forward, but holding the frequency steady as the collective arrives on its own. January 2026, threshold markers. 5D heart grid fully online. Collective alignment now overrides narrative authority. Collapse without drama systems fall not through chaos, but through loss of relevance. Post-regime stabilization phase begins. The focus shifts from exposure to reorientation. Authority reassignment, power migrates on the dissolution of long-standing dictatorships and control institutions. What is unfolding in places like Venezuela is not an anomaly, it is a signal. Authoritarian governments that have remained frozen in time for decades are no longer energetically supported by the planetary field. Their longevity was sustained through isolation, suppression, and narrative containment. Those conditions no longer hold. This does not manifest as sudden global upheaval. It manifests as loss of internal coherence. Nations long ruled by centralized strongmen, Venezuela, Cuba, and others with similar historical architectures, are approaching liberation not through invasion or rebellion, but through structural fatigue. Control systems exhaust themselves when populations no longer emotionally participate. When belief withdraws, enforcement becomes unsustainable. For those living inside these systems, the experience often registers as relief rather than fear. The removal of long-standing constraint feels like oxygen returning to the field. For outside observers conditioned by ideological narratives, the same moment can appear confusing or destabilizing. This discrepancy is not dangerous, it is diagnostic. Lived reality updates faster than distant interpretation. These transitions are not designed to create power vacuums. They are designed to return authority to the people most affected. At the same time, this liberation pattern is mirrored within non-governmental control institutions. Systems such as legacy media, centralized pharmaceutical authority, and profit-driven information gatekeepers are not collapsing through exposure alone. They are losing relevance through decentralization. When people no longer require permission to access information, healing, or truth, centralized arbiters quietly weaken. This does not mean these systems vanish overnight. It means their influence thins, trust migrates, dependence dissolves, alternatives emerge organically. What follows is not disorder, but redistribution. The planetary field is no longer compatible with structures that depend on secrecy, coercion, or enforced dependency. Systems that cannot adapt to transparency will either decentralize or phase out, not through catastrophe, but through obsolescence. This is liberation without panic, transition without collapse trauma, expiration without destruction. The common thread across governments, institutions, and narratives is the same. Authority that cannot withstand awareness cannot remain centralized. What is being restored globally is not chaos, it is sovereignty.